Thank you all for being here today and giving me the opportunity to join in this amazing dialogue and such a diversity of astrologers. It's really an exciting venue. Today is a twilight day. Depending on where you live, Venus stations direct early tomorrow morning, and tomorrow afternoon, Mercury's going to station retrograde. So this is a perfect Kairos day to visit what we're going to meet on the road ahead, and with our newly perceived values and priorities and commitments over the past Venus retrograde. And we're going to have the opportunity to revisit our personal narratives regarding all of them as Mercury stops in his tracks and starts to move backwards. I'm going to start here with a quote from Carl Jung. He wrote it maybe 50 or 60 years ago, but I think it's still prophetic. He said, "A mood of universal destruction and renewal has set its mark on our age. This mood makes itself felt everywhere, politically, socially, and philosophically. We are living in what the Greeks called the kairos, the right moment for a metamorphosis of the gods, of the fundamental principles and symbols. The peculiarity of our time, which is certainly not of our conscious choosing, is the expression of the unconscious human within us who is changing. Coming generations will have to take account of this momentous transformation if humanity is not to destroy itself through the might of its own technology and science. So much is at stake, and so much depends on the psychological constitution of the modern human." So the reason that I chose this talk today is because we have some really powerful transits and conjunctions coming down the pike at us. And, we are all holding that, this all begins in 2020, 2021, 2022, but that's not quite true, because Saturn is already moving into orbit of its conjunction with Pluto. It's still 12 degrees away. Actually, this was last week, but as this unfolds, we're already moving into that zone where we're going to begin to feel the powerful dynamic between the two. So I've got a chart here just for the moment, and we're seeing a balsamic moon here. This was last week. I'm not sure exactly why I chose this chart. I thought I had a different one. Excuse me. But anyway, this is going to be about how we're handling our responsibilities, where we're hunkered down and refusing to change. Oh, I'm sorry. This is I can't see my chart because I'm looking at all the pictures of everybody's pretty face. This is the nodal ingress. I apologize. So already at the ingress last week, we were seeing Saturn in its approach to Pluto. And this nodal ingress is really going to be powerful because it's carrying this Capricorn and Cancer energy through the next 18 months. It's a core dynamic of the time that we're passing through. It's the karmic axis. It's the evolutionary principle energy that really is working on all of us. So Saturn is clearly the ruler of the South Node. And he really hasn't changed roles that much because he, as the traditional ruler of Aquarius, he has been the ruler of the South Node, for the past 18 months, previous to this. So he's really just changing his uniform, if you would. He's really putting on his more natural habit, if you would. Coming into his native sign, but he's really continuing the work that he's been doing all for the past 18 months. And so we're going to see, issues about responsibilities. We're going to see, where we hunkered down, where are we stuck, where have we failed to validate ourselves emotionally and depended on others for our own validation. And as this ingress occurred, we had a long-standing trine from Saturn to Uranus. That trine is going to become a square as we go forward towards 2020 and 2022. So, we've had this Uranian archetype that's been working on our individuality, on our need to self-actualize through that individual expression of who we are. it's been relatively, I don't want to say it's been facilitating, because, there's a very wide arc of expression from, any of these archetypes, especially Uranus. And we've seen both sides of this spectrum, from light to shadow, and had to deal with all of it. It's going to become a square as we go forward. And so we're going to see even more stresses and pressures regarding our authenticity, regarding our truth, and regarding our authenticity and our individuality. We've also got a T-square because Uranus is squaring the nodes, and we've got Pallas opposite Chiron here, which is creating a very powerful T-square. And, we're going to see Pallas and Chiron and Ceres, in addition to the outer planets, very, very active through the charts that I'm going to show you today. So we're going to kind of follow their thread as well. Pallas is going to inform us. Pallas was the goddess, the knowledge, the wisdom that came to the heroes of the Greeks and Trojans through the Trojan War, and later to Odysseus, in his 10-year travels, finding his way home after all those battles. She's very active in the sky right now. All of these goddesses are. I actually did a talk a couple months ago about it. So there's a lot of information out there, but they're out there assisting us. This tremendous goddess energy. And this is also part of this Cancer Capricorn lunar nodes, because we're talking about patriarchy and matriarchy, and clearly the wisdom of our mothers is coming back to us, our grandmothers, our ancestors. We're having all this information reappear in our culture, some dramatically, some challenged, some angrily, but it's all coming out, and it's all good. We'll kind of talk about it as we move along. So as I said, Saturn is already in orb. This is the chart for next week. We see that they're only 5 degrees apart, and I use 5 degree orbs for my transits. So all the transits that I'm going to show you today are all within that framework. You may use a shorter or wider orb. That's okay. But here are the actual transit dates for this year. I apologize. I got 2020 here. That's a typo. I apologize. It's 2019. So it's in order from February through mid-July, and then early November again to May, and then back July to November. So I'm not sure. I don't think we had the early November. I apologize. I think there's a little confusion here on my part. I don't think it's November to May. I think it's July and then July to November. So at any rate, the point here is that we're going to see this dynamic unfold as 2019 unfolds. And even though they will move, quote, out of orb for a couple of months perhaps, that doesn't mean we're going to stop feeling it, because whatever is set in motion through that first initial phase, it will certainly hang in there. It will literally set in stone, and we're talking Capricorn here. And we'll see it continue to be working even when the planets move out of orb a little bit, when the retrograde cycle comes in, and then again, it will kick in again at the end of the year. So we're definitely going to see in 2019 the beginnings of what the 2020s are going to look like. And I apologize for the typo. All right, so here's the ingress chart, and we can see that there's a powerful T-square. We've got Chiron opposite Pallas. This is the mentor, the healer, and this is our wisdom and the information that seems to come to us of its own volition, if you would. I kind of correlate Pallas to the transition between Uranus and Mercury. We see Uranus as the higher self, as the higher mind, and Mercury is the lower mind. I think that Pallas arbitrates and is the transformational space between those two. And so she's an informer. I think the word inform is what I associate with Pallas. It's my favorite keyword for her, because she does inform us. The question is, do we listen? Do we hear her? Are we open and receptive to the information she's telling us? And as I said, we have the trine to Uranus, which is going to morph into a square as the planets move through their gyration. So we've got a very, very powerful mix here that's really setting up a platform and a need to really pay attention to our responsibilities and how we're nurturing ourselves, how we nurture others, how are we paying attention to what's important to us, where we're stuck, etc. These planets are already in orb. They're 5 degrees apart here as of next week. They actually come into orb, and so we see, again, with this stellium in Capricorn, Saturn, Pluto, Venus, and the South Node, all coming together. It's a very tight bundle, and it's really this is, if forgive the expression, this is going to be the weakest expression of these planets as we move through these charts. You'll see the crescendo really builds over time as these planets begin to coagulate together in the sign of Capricorn. So these are the dates, and as I said, it's going to move in and out of orb through 2019, but we're going to begin to feel it. We're going to get our first taste of what the 2020s are going to look like. So here is the actual chart for the conjunction on January 12th, 2020. I'm going to come back to this a few slides later, because I've got a lot of charts that we're going to go through, and I have them in kind of chronological calendar order. But this is the chart, and you can see this will give you a good idea what's coming down the pike. And we've got 6 planets plus the lunar node in Capricorn. We're seeing a fixed square, Uranus, which, as I said, has been a fire trine. We've got the square from Saturn to Uranus, but it was a trine for all these 2 years. It's going to then be 2 years of a trine in a fixed configuration. And we've got Saturn, Pluto conjunct Mercury, so we can really expect to see more of these powerfully authoritative verbal expressions, marches, people really speaking out. It reminds me of the movie Network, where the protagonist in that movie threw the window open in his office, and he stuck his head out into the street, and he screamed at the top of my lungs, "I'm mad as hell, and I can't take it anymore." This is the kind of expression we're going to see. But like I said, it's a wide spectrum, a wide arc of expression. So we're going to see the light, we're going to see the shadow. It's going to be an interesting mix. Also note here the presence of Ceres, partile to Saturn and Pluto. And I think this is very, very significant. We're going to see Ceres playing out very, very strongly here through these transits. Ceres, I've got too many charts, and I'm kind of counting on everybody really to be pretty well founded in, the archetypes of Capricorn and Cancer and the mythology, hopefully, of Demeter and Persephone. But the mythology it gives us the story of tremendous loss, of a deep, deep personal loss. But it's not a loss that's, intellectual or, just emotional. It's an embodiment. Demeter literally embodied the loss of her daughter. And that's what Ceres does. We somatically feel these losses as they appear. And again, I think that everybody can kind of relate to, some of the things that we've been feeling politically, spiritually, socially, economically in our world. It's an embodiment where Ceres is opening up the space to our direct emotional experience, right, which is how we learn something. It doesn't mean much if we learn it through somebody else's experience. We have to experience it. And Ceres, it's that somatic knowing. There's no compromise with it. We have to just deal with it and work through it. So I'm going to kind of step through the prior Saturn, Pluto, Capricorn conjunctions themselves. I didn't bring up every Saturn, Pluto, Capricorn, because obviously it's about every 35 years or so. It's too many. But I think the ones that are in Capricorn are what's really most significant to us. So I went back BC to the first one, before the Common Era, and we see in 187 BC. This was pretty much the end of the lineage of Greek power in the Mediterranean. Sparta had held the power for most of the time that we know of the Greek classical age, because of their warlike state. They're very powerful, but their power begins to diminish because the Greek states form a coalition of city-states, and these city-states then become the dominant power. However, almost immediately in this time frame, the Romans have ascended. The Roman Empire has ascended and really basically overrun all of the Eastern Mediterranean. And so they really forced the Greeks to give up all of their properties in Turkey and what's now Turkey and Greece. And they become the master of the Eastern Mediterranean. And this really is significant and correlates to exactly how Saturn and Pluto work together, because you'll see it's about a redistribution of power and a restructuring of power. There's a 240 and then a 500-year alternation between these cycles. So we jump ahead 150 years, and we see that just after the AD, we have the emergence of Christianity, and then we have the Jewish diaspora. And both of these events were tremendous, were epic. Christianity clearly changed the landscape, the religious, spiritual landscape of the planet. And the Jewish diaspora also ended and created a whole new era for the Judaism. They were forced to migrate around the world, out of the Middle East. And so both of these changes really, again, were tremendous power shift and changed the landscape of the way power is distributed, of our values, of our priorities, and the governance in the world pretty much became religious as much as political. Jump ahead 500 years, and Muhammad is born, and we don't have to ask too much to understand the spread and the power of Islam in our world. It's one of the major conflicts and confrontations and dichotomies that really are permeated our world today. It's huge, and so clearly a whole new age began. And in Europe, we had the same kind of thing, because Clovis, probably a rather obscure king, though if you've read Michael Bajan's book about, I can't think of the name of the book, but he describes the early first and second centuries of Europe, and Clovis was very facilitated a lot of what happened in those years, because he was able to unite all the tribes instead of having all a tribal order. He actually created a kingdom, and it lasted for 2 centuries. And then Justinian, who was the Pope, really moved the center of Christianity to Constantinople. And a lot of the issues that we now deal with in terms of the conflicts between Christianity and Judaism, I believe anti-Semitism really began in those days. A lot of things began to emerge that changed the whole balance of power religiously in the world. In 1783, Charlemagne kind of picked up where Clovis left off, and he united all of Western Europe. And it was the first time since the classical era, the Roman Empire, that all of Europe had been united under a single rule. Again, consolidation of power. 1294, the papal seat is moved from Italy to France, the Avignon papacy. Again, a transfer of power, a consolidation of power, change. Edward I threw all the Jews out of England, so this is, again, a repercussion of what happened, 500 years earlier. And Marco Polo comes back to Europe, and this doesn't sound like it's a very political or has anything to do with power, but it did. It expanded our knowledge of the world, and knowledge is power. It changed everything that was understood about the geography of the planet, and also introduced science and technology and different food sources and gunpowder, and brought a lot of things back to Europe that weren't there before. And again, it was a tremendous change, and over time it created a tremendous shift in power because of it. In 1519, Magellan circumnavigates the globe, again opening up our understanding of the world that we live in. The conquistadors conquer Mexico, the American Southwest, bring disease to the Native Americans in both North and South America. Again, the tremendous power shift. The Native Americans had really held the reins, perhaps for as many as 10,000 years through North and South America. There's an excellent PBS program, if nobody has seen it yet, called Native Americans, and it's fascinating. And it's the real history of prehistory of our planet. And when the conquistadors came to the New World, it all changed. We had the Protestant Reformation. So here is Christianity unseated, or all of a sudden Christianity's got some competition. Very, very powerful. And the same thing with Islam. Suleiman I, 15 to 25 million people. He brought the entire Ottoman Empire together under single rule. And Verrazano explores the coast of North America. And I include all these explorations because I think they are important in terms of the power. Land was originally the single most important commodity. That was the number one asset. If you had land, you were wealthy, and it has continued to this day. And in India, the Mughal Empire was founded, and 1519 through 1800, 3 centuries of rulership. So clearly a consolidation of power. So 2019 opens, with a real shot, because we have our first eclipse season in January. And here on January 5th, this is the chart for the Capricorn solar eclipse. The eclipse occurs at the midpoint. I don't do a lot of work with midpoints. I know some people do, but I couldn't dismiss how this eclipse occurs right on the midpoint of the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. It's really pretty remarkable. We've got Venus conjunct Ceres in Scorpio, and the last time Venus was conjunct Ceres was at the July 2018 Cancer solar eclipse. So we have this cycle repeating here, but it's gone from Cancer to Capricorn. It's moved to its opposite, to its polarity, working very, very strongly here. So we have Ceres really bringing to the game, if you would, bringing into this model, this energetic model, this need to really experience what it is that we have lost, what it is that it's gone, whether somebody took it away or we let it go on our own. It really doesn't matter. It has evaporated in some way for us. It has disappeared, and it is very, very conspicuous in its absence. Venus and Ceres are in a water trine as well with Chiron and the lunar north node. So again, we see this, there's a remedy here because Chiron is our mentor and our healer. Symptoms are an attempt to heal. And what Venus Ceres is really, Venus is our red blood cells. What is being exposed are the symptoms, the illnesses um, that our culture hold, and even within ourselves, individually and collectively, we're going to experience this on two levels. It's conjunct the North Node, so there's tremendous potential here to go forward. And it's a facilitating trine. It's a water trine. It's going to be full of emotion. But again, I think it's the emotion that we need. It's the emotion that really reaches our soul and shows us the truth, and it gives us the ability to move forward. And this is a tremendous impetus to move forward if we work with it, if we reach out for the healing, if we reach out for the teachers who show up or look for it. But it's kind of like Palace. We have to ask the questions. We have to ask for the help. We have to want the teacher or the mentor or the new information. We have to want to be informed. If we have no interest in changing, then we don't. Excuse me. There's also a cardinal cross in this chart. Uranus, Pluto, and the lunar nodes. And Uranus is opposing Pluto, Pallas, Athena, as we move through 2019. And I see this directly as the information being available to us, the help is available to us in terms of our own individuality, in terms of the information that we can receive. Again, Uranus is that higher mind. It is what comes to us seemingly out of left field. Here's Pallas opposing it, and I think it's actually going to accentuate it and punch it up a notch. It's in Libra, so it could come through our relationships, but there's a need here to balance and to find that center ground where we're getting these messages and to hear them and listen to them, because it is the ability to heal the symptoms that Venus series are showing us. It's our remedy. 2 weeks later, we have the Leo lunar eclipse. And later on, you'll see I've got this all listed for you with the dates and times and zodiacal points. So you'll be able to have a whole list of it. But here we have an eclipse at 1 degree of Leo. So the full moon is separating from the nodes. And so we've got this Aquarius energy and the Leo energy coming in temporarily again. So it's almost a kind of, even maybe a little retrograde perhaps from carryover from the previous cycle. So this is about finding our own authenticity, finding our self-actualizing according to who in our hearts, in our soul, we know that we are, not who somebody else thinks we should be, or we have to find that core, that core authenticity and individuality, and this is certainly going to encourage it. We've got Venus conjunct Jupiter here, and so we're definitely going to be searching for the priorities and the values that reflect that truth that hopefully we're finding. And there's a water trine as well, Moon conjunct the North Node, Ceres and Chiron. So again, this is a reiteration of what we saw in the eclipse 2 weeks before, where we have these symptoms, we recognize that things are coming up that need to be healed, and very dramatic. They're appearing very dramatically. And they involve our emotional body, and we're going to embody them all emotionally, and it's what's pulling us forward. It's the North Node. It's our tractor beam going forward if we work with it. And again, it's a trine. We have to be proactive. Squares and oppositions, we don't really need much help to get involved with them. We do need someone else involved to pull it out from us. We can't work through squares and oppositions on our own. But generally somebody or a circumstance or a relationship will show up that are going to propel us forward, whether we want to go there or not. We're going to go kicking and screaming, or we're going to go proactively. But trines, you got to grab a trine by the horns and ride it, because if you don't, it could just very easily pass even unnoticed. This water trine actually will become a fire trine when we get to the July eclipses. So again, this energy is going to be very, very active. So it's going to start off, kind of ease us into us. It's going to kind of hint, say, this is where we need to go. But as we move through the year, you'll see it's going to kick in and say, well, you're going if you want it, whether you want to go or not. So here we come to July, and here we have the new moon, the eclipse in Cancer, and it's applying to a first quarter square with Neptune. So it's going to be loaded with emotional content. I mean, Cancer and Neptune, Pisces. Again, this is our emotional cycles and currents are going to be very, very powerful through all of 2019. We're not, unfortunately, we're not going to have much respite from the onslaught of these emotional, events in our world. And I'd like to say that it's going to ease up. I clearly don't believe that it will, and I also clearly don't believe that it needs to, because I think that we are experiencing exactly what we need to experience. And we like to say, well, why do we have to do it? We're astrologers, or we've been working on ourselves, and why do we have to go through all this? Well, it's not about us. We're here, if nothing more than to just kind of like talk about it and maybe hopefully live by example as best as we can, so that other people can kind of understand what they need to do. But it's going to happen regardless of where we're at. We still are a minority. And so we're going to see this in our outer world. Neptune trines and sextiles the nodes. So this is a really beautiful aspect, because when you bring Saturn and Neptune together, this is the ability to take our dreams and ground them, to actually take our dreams, our inspirations, use our intuition, and create something real with it and pull it down and but it's a sextile. Sextile is an opportunity. The trines are pretty much a given. Again, if you work with them, the sextile is one step removed from that trine. It's the opportunity for mastery. It's the opportunity to acquire that skill. But again, we have to seize the opportunity. It's the carpe diem. So it's there for us. The potentials are there, but we have to work with it. We have Jupiter quincunx the moon. We're still struggling to take responsibility. We're going to still be struggling to hold this place for the truth. It's at times it's going to seem like the truth is elusive. It's going to seem like that sanctuary that we're seeking, that Cancerian place of safety, the security that it can provide, on either side of that polarity, is elusive. We're going to have to keep working at it. We're going to have to keep growing. We're going to have to keep learning. We're going to have to keep searching. This is not going to come easily. We're overcoming, 6,000 years of, complacency perhaps, or drifting. I'm not sure how to categorize it. It is what it is. But this is what we're faced with. And then we have a fire trine, Mars, Chiron, and Ceres again. So here the water trine has become fire. So we're going to have the ability to really self-actualize these energies, to really feel this emotional energy that we've embodied, to take these healing opportunities, these mentoring opportunities, whether we are either the mentor or the mentoree, I don't know if that's the right word, but to take them all by the horns, to have the courage to get out there and speak our truth and do what it is that we know in our hearts we have to do, not necessarily what's in our head, but what's in our hearts. So in mid-July, we get the polarity here. We get the Capricorn lunar eclipse. And we've got Saturn and Pluto retrograde here. So clearly it's going to add another whole layer of intensity to this Capricorn energy that we're going to be experiencing. Again, the south node is sandwiched in between Saturn and Pluto. It's 1 degree away from Saturn. It's really going to be tight. We've got a fire trine with Jupiter, Ceres, Mars, Mercury, and Chiron. Not showing the trine. Yeah, I guess the trine is there in the chart. And so here we have, again, an opportunity to be able to self-actualize, our truth, to be able to to take this woundings, to take these losses, to take to take the teachings and the healings that we have been able to find and to work with them and to use that as a new foundation, as a new structure, as a new basis, to go forward. And there's also a cardinal cross here in the chart with Sun conjunct Venus, North Node, Pallas, and the Moon with the South Node, Saturn and Eris. And this is really, really strong. I love Pallas on the North Node because, again, I think that the Pallas squaring the North Node, because, again, I think it gives us the opportunity to listen. It gives us the opportunity to be an activist. She was a warrior, but she would always try to negotiate peace before she picked up the sword or her spear. Actually, she probably fought with her spear. So it's an opportunity to get active and to get out of the house, get off the sofa, get out and be part of the community, be part of our Capricorn is our whole community, our whole social sphere, in a way like Aquarius. It's the world that we live in. It's the world that we're part of, and to find our place in it, and to find the role that we can perform as part of society that is proactive and positive, and working with the North Node, working with Pallas, working with all these planetary energies to go forward and to just pull this whole thing in the right direction, because it's about consciousness. It really is. We're all pulling this wagon, and the more of us that are pulling in the same direction, the sooner that wagon's going to end up where we want it to go. 2019 doesn't leave quietly. We're going to have one more eclipse in December, a second Capricorn solar. And this one is really interesting. We've got 7 celestial bodies in Capricorn. I mean, it's really tight. Jupiter's on the new moon. It's going to totally accentuate and expand whatever energies are really present at this juncture. And then we have Ceres also conjunct Saturn and Pluto. So, again, we're looking at a tremendous capacity to, take responsibility for the world around us, to not just say, well, somebody else will do it, or, we have to, we live in a fix me mentality in our country. And I know I'm speaking to people who are not just in the US, but, to a great degree, we've been raised, in a world where things seemed so relatively easy, that if we got messed up, our teachers would help us, or our spiritual leader would pull us back into line, or our teacher, or our doctor, or our psychiatrist, whatever. We could go find some help to get fixed. And part of what we're dealing with here is that we have to have self-responsibility. And I think that's to me, that's the underlying thing that's happening through all these Capricorn transits and through these nodal transits. We have to take responsibility. The Native Americans have given up the guardianship of the planet. They've said it openly. They have watched over this planet for centuries, if not millennia, and they've seen us, just piss all over it. Excuse my French. And it's up to us. We're the ones we've been waiting for. Nobody's going to come to save us. If we don't figure this out, then there are different trajectories forward, and I'm hoping that the trajectory forward is the one that we choose consciously, not the one that we drift into because we wouldn't take any responsibility for what was happening. So this is the Saturn Pluto conjunction. It's 2020 is going to open with it. You can see here we've got 6 planets and the lunar south node in Capricorn. Saturn in a fixed square with Uranus, fire trine. It was a fire trine since 2016. Now it's in a fixed square. So again, there's going to be some tension. There's going to be some pressures here. It's not going to be a walk in the park. Saturn, Pluto conjunct Mercury. Like I said in the opening, we can expect some really powerful, outrage. Not just people expressing, how they feel, but outrage. And we're also going to see some blowback. There's no reason to believe that all the voices that we're going to hear are going to be progressive, or moderate voices. We're going to hear it from both sides. The spectrum is wide and deep. You've got a semi-square to Mars that clearly is going to ramp things up. We need to find the truth. It's Mars and Sag. We need to focus on the truth. We need to have the courage of our truth, and I think that's the biggest part. We can't just sit back and expect somebody else to take care of it. We have to get involved. There's a 5-point stellium with Saturn Pluto Ceres partile, 22 degrees. I mean, this is pretty remarkable. And Uranus, this is the chart for Washington, D.C., the U.S. Capitol. Uranus is rising in the first house, and it mirrors the Gemini rising chart that I use for our country. And to me, it indicates that, and this is kind of getting ahead of the game, because I've got a second part to this talk that I'm going to do in February, which is about what's actually happening in this country in terms of these outer planet transits. But this is an indication to me that things are really rising up, or bubbling up from the surface. And it's in Taurus. We for 7 years we watched Uranus move through Aries, and the way that people were self-actualizing was, again, ran the full spectrum from total a-holes, again, excuse my French, to people who really showed up to be quite saintly. So, and everything in between. We've seen it all. And now it's in Taurus. So people aren't just as full of themselves. Now they're hunkered down in being full of themselves, or they're hunkered down in their values and their beliefs and where their priorities are. It's going to be an interesting 7 years to see how this unfolds. And I think anybody who's also familiar with U.S. history knows that it's also been a prelude every time to some major war conflagration. When Uranus moves into Gemini, the United States has been at war every time. I was born in with Uranus and Gemini. We've got Chiron again squaring the nodes, and we've got a yod, Uranus, the south node, and Mars pointing at Mars. And this is where I get this fact that we need to have the courage. We need to take the reins and get out there and do our best, with our own conviction and our own courage to basically see if we can get things back on track, one at a time, one by one by one by one. It's the 100th monkey. In April, Jupiter will conjoin Pluto as well, of 2020. So this is really going to powerfully inflate, blow up everything that's come before. The Hellenists, the traditional astrologers, have labeled Jupiter to be the greater benefic. It can be, but really Jupiter doesn't make things better. Jupiter just makes things bigger. Whatever it touches, it's going to make bigger. So if it touches upon something which is really degrading, it's going to be a bigger degradation. If it touches upon something which is really more enlightening or more uplifting, then it's going to have that effect as well. It's an enhancer. But primarily, we have to understand that what we're looking at, Saturn is the structure of our consciousness, according to Jeffrey Green, and I agree with him. Whether it touches every planet in our chart or not, it is the way our consciousness is structured in each and every case. And Jupiter is really the content of that structure in a lot of ways. Jupiter is our belief system, and Jupiter is how we grow. We grow according to what we believe. Back in the 60s, any of us who were here remember that, we used to say, you are what you eat. I think, as the 2020s unfold, we're going to say you are what you believe. Because it is our beliefs that drive us forward. And what we're really experiencing around the world is this confrontation of belief. It's not fact. It's not, it's just what each of us believes. And that's a pretty hard thing to shake. And guess what? We need to change our beliefs. We need direct emotional experience of some other perspective. So you see how this is working. We're going to have those emotional experiences that are going to show us that we need a new paradigm. We need a whole new model going forward. At this conjunction, we've got Mercury new face to Neptune, and this in Pisces, and this can really be a very, very powerful new cycle. Because our dreams can be very real, our intuition can become very intense. And as they unfold, we are able to pull down into our consciousness what has been in our unconscious, what has been subconscious. We can pull it down from, we intuitively pull these inspirations and new ideas down into our world to work with. It can be very poetic. It can be very really a beautiful way to work through it. It can also be very deceptive. We can also run into a lot of subversive, subterfuge as well. Again, all of these archetypes have a wide arc of expression. So we can't say it's going to be one thing or the other. It's going to be a mix. But it really is going to depend on the mass consciousness of the planet, which way it's going to shift. It's like a huge tug of war. Some of us are on one side and some of us are on the other side. And we just have to, encourage that consciousness in the world to really tip the balance. And then the last of the major conjunctions will be in Jupiter and Saturn come together themselves. And this is a major conjunction. It's been watched. This used to be the two outer planets. When these two planets came together, it was a major event. So we're going to kind of see a culmination occur. It's at 0 degrees of Aquarius, very, very significant. And I think that it presages what we're looking at as the 2020s unfold. This Aquarian energy coming in. It's revolution. It is independence. It's the need for freedom. But how is that independence and freedom and that revolutionary change going to occur? I think we all feel in our hearts and in our souls and intuitively Eckhart Tolle's suggestion that there is a new Earth that's emerging. But how it's going to emerge, the mechanics of it and the circumstances are up to us. None of this is written in stone, Capricorn or no Capricorn. It's all going to unfold because we are conscious beings, and what will happen tomorrow is going to be totally dependent on the choices and decisions that we make today. And we will have those choices. We will have those opportunities. The question is, will we take them, and what will we do with them? But it's all good. I have a real positive sense of the future, because I know that I just sense that there is an anima mundi. There is a divine. There's a grand design to the way that things unfold. And even when we're down here in the trenches, up to our ankles in alligators, there still is movement. There still is this sense of a future which is bright and cheerful and positive and enlightened. A golden age is out there, maybe 13,000 years in the future, but it's waiting for us. And if we truly do believe in the cycle of eternal return, 13,000 years is nothing. It's just happening in a different portion of our awareness. It's also conjunct Pallas here again. So here's Pallas. Once again, just holding her spear up in the air and saying, "This is what we need to do, and this is what you need to do." And that's her job. That's what she does so well. So this is the list of all the dates and all the celestial points that are activated. It'll be in the recording, and I'd be happy to share these slides with anybody who would like to have me. If you just email me, I'll send all this out to you. You'll have them. But this is the progression. When we meet again in February, I'm going to kind of pick up the story of 2020 and take it forward. So I have here a couple of quotes. You know, some of the people in our community who have talked about this before, I think they've said it very well. So I just want to include this in this talk. Maurice Fernandez wrote this a little bit for Astrology in 2015. He said, the meaning of forces Saturn-Pluto represents, among other things, the redistribution of power in the world. Or in other words, which faction will make the decisions that affect the greater collective, and whether this occurs in plain sight or behind the scenes. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Richard Nolly. He is a very active Facebook astrologer. He says, Jupiter and Saturn were the outermost planets in ancient times and were called the great chronocrators by astrologers of old. And for millennia, the alignment of these two planets has been regarded as a significator of great social, economic, political watersheds, historic turning points, if you will. And clearly, we're witnessing that. You know, this is all coming on the heels, they've even mentioned it, but this is all coming on the heels of the Uranus-Pluto for 5 years. So this is like the second act. That has never stopped. We're building on that platform, that Capricorn platform. And lastly, Bill Herbst, who also writes a lot for Matt Astrologer, he says the Saturn-Pluto, and he's probably the most pessimistic, if you would, of the three of these guys. He says the Saturn-Pluto cycle is about the use of coercive force by authority, sometimes with the approval of the public. It connects to the authoritarian, repressive, and often violent impulses of human nature. The cycle is characterized not by hope or optimism, but is rather a defensive response to fearful expectations, a kind of striking out in self-protection against perceived threats, both real and imagined. The emphasis is on definite black and white responses to our shared fears about reality. There is no gray zone here, no relativity, no subtlety. Instead, absolutes tend to predominate. On the positive side, Saturn-Pluto periods indicate courage or perseverance during extreme hardship or against seemingly insurmountable odds, as well as moral and emotional staunchness, the strength to hold the line against negative or destructive forces. Power can be used for good or ill during Saturn-Pluto periods, and both are likely. I really like Bill's writings very much, and I agree with him. And people accuse me sometimes of going on the dark side, but sometimes we have to go there because that's how we're going to find the light. So how does this all weave together? As I said, Saturn's the structure of our consciousness, and what we're really experiencing is a restructuring of consciousness. We're seeing the consciousness of the planet being reformed. It's a tremendous awakening, and I come back to Saturn here as the traditional ruler of Aquarius. It's a tremendous awakening that is occurring across the planet, and that's what we're seeing, a wave of, wake up. And Jupiter holds the contents of our consciousness or our beliefs. Our beliefs are changing because they need to change. The belief that one color is better than another, or men are better than women, or my country's better than your country, that's all got to go away. It's just not working anymore. It stopped working a long time ago, but we've all put up with it because it didn't affect us. It didn't matter. We could, go about our lives and go to work and come home to our families and come home and cook dinner and go to a movie, and nothing was changing. Well, guess what? It's all changing. We no longer have that space where sanctuary, if you would, where we can't pay attention to our outer world. I think for a lot of us, for me, it began, the day I was in high school and they killed John Kennedy. We've had experiences that made us realize that our outer world is as important, if not more important, than our inner world in some ways, that we have to pay attention to what's happening. It's not just about us or what's in our heads or, in our home life or in our neighborhood. We're part of everything around us. We're all connected, and what happens what happens in Asia or what happens in Africa affects us. We're no longer can be disconnected and separate. And again, I think it's about that separateness, and that's what the evolution of consciousness really is about, is recognizing that we are not separate, that we're all together. I have a friend who likes to say that there's just one of us on the planet, and to me that tells the whole story. Pluto holds the karmic thread of how that consciousness is unfolding, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing circumstances and relationships show up in our lives, individually and collectively, that are exposing the karmas that need to be healed and the direction forward.
2 minutes left, thanks.
Oh, thanks. It's just right. Pallas is informing us. We need to listen. We need to listen to the intuition, to the inspiration. We need to pay attention to anything that comes into our heads or our lives, seemingly out of left field, because it's not coming out of left field. It's coming home. Series embodiment accentuates our direct emotional experience. How is the structure of our power changing? How is the structure of our consciousness changing? Where does that ultimate authority reside? How is power shared? How are collective resources shared? Where are our collective and individual boundaries being challenged? And what are the karmas being exposed? These are the questions we need to ask ourselves. And this is what we're seeing around us. And when we understand the answer to some of these questions and find the resolution to them, we'll find that the things that really are disturbing us and the traumas that we're living through will all go away. I will be back. I will do outer planets, the U.S. transit, the U.S. Pluto return in February. There's a lot more to this story. The 2020s are, we're coming into a time where astrologically, for our country anyway, excuse me, Linda, it's most similar to the American Civil War and the American Revolution. It's a kind of a combination in some ways. The divisiveness, it's all coming out to be healed. We've lived with this for 250 years. We've lived with 6,000 years of patriarchy. It's all coming out in the wash. And we are the ones that we've been waiting for to heal it. And that's my story.
Okay, wonderful. Daniel, do you have contact details?
I do.
Okay, lovely.
And like I said, if you
yes?
like these slides, just email me and I'd be happy to send them to you.
Okay, great. Any final thoughts before we wind down?
I just wish everybody, well, coming through a holiday season, enjoy yourself, find your place in the world, find your place in your heart, and do what your heart tells you to do.
Okay, well, thank you from all of us. Daniel, would you all please thank Daniel Fiverson?
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.